The way I define social practice is more thinking about it as a new term, rather than thinking about it as a new set of practices. So my sort of understanding of it and relationship to it is to think about it as a broad term that's trying to describe practices that are socially engaged, and so practices that are prioritizing social engagement and social processes over the creation of objects. And I think it's an interesting term because it is so broad, and so it's able to kind of encompass a lot of different things. And also, I think because it's a newer term and because it's becoming popularized in many ways, it's encouraging folks to continue to think about art in this way of social engagement, and I think more people are sort of taking interest and in some cases trying to shift their artwork in that direction. And then I also think that because it is such a broad term, that one, that's problematic because it's harder to, in some ways, evaluate or to put a critical lens on it. It's just all inclusive. And then two, that some people may consider it as a term that is describing practices that haven't existed before, and I feel like that does a disservice to art making in general to not acknowledge kind of like the long history of social engagement inside of the art world.
Could you can you give us an example?
One thing that I think is happening in social practice is that participation becomes the the most important goal that people kind of see in these types of projects, and then they lose sight of, say, the form of a project or the other goals of a project. And I feel like that could be problematic because I feel like certain artists that are working in a socially engaged manner may or may not be elevating the participation of others as the sole goal of the project. So I feel like when it gets evaluated on those terms alone, that's losing sight of the other things that it's offering. So that's one challenge. And the other challenge is, I think, I guess for me that's the biggest challenge, is like to keep it critical. And how do you do that when it's so broad? And how do you do that when lots of artists are working in different ways?
And what do you think? How do you think this is going to evolve? As you say, many people are taking this up now. It's a growing phenomenon.
Mm-hmm.
Where do you think it's going?
That's a good question. I mean, I feel like it could be like a lot of other terms in the art world and sort of disappear with time, where, another term comes up that people will grab and use that. I think that's one possibility. Another possibility that's already, happening is that it just continues to be institutionalized, where more and more programs take it on as, an MFA that's offered, and I'm in one of those programs. And I think there's dangers and like good things that could come out of the institutionalization. One, if the institution is really promoting like a critical look at it, I feel like that's a really important educational space. And then if other institutions are just sort of just benefiting from the popularity of it and not necessarily adding a critical lens to it, that's when I feel like that it won't evolve, that it'll just stay to be more of a kind of broad set of practices that in many cases aren't offering much on the side of, for me, like being a force in education or a force in critical thinking or a force in social change. I feel like that's the way I'd like to value socially engaged art making. Yeah.